Now, even though we saw a lot of blood during the Attitude Era and Ruthless Aggression Era, there was always one exception to wrestlers bleeding, and that exception would be women's matches. For some reason, blood never seemed to be permitted in women's matches, meaning that bleeding or blood capsules was completely out the question. So this meant that when a WWE woman was busted open during a match, it was completely by accident and done the hard way. The same can be said for the modern era, an era in which blading and blood is virtually obsolete, whether it be male or female wrestlers. But let's look at some of the rarest moments of a WWE female wrestler who was busted open in the ring. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell for daily wrestling videos, and follow us on Facebook for exclusive lists.
For counter, these two athletes have an answer for everything.
Number 10, Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 34. Going into WrestleMania 34 and the match between Charlotte Flair and Asuka, fans expected it to be physical.
Charlotte going for it. Oh! Thinking about the moonsault. Oh, no! Oh my gosh! Look at Asuka! Asuka got a hold of her!
Asuka's got the triangle locked in.
However, no fans actually expected one of the women to get busted open, but that's exactly what happened. Halfway through the match, it appeared as if Charlotte had a nasty gash on her arm. Now, it's worth noting it's standard practice that the WWE stop a match if there is a serious cut on a wrestler's face. However, this doesn't appear to be the case if the cut is somewhere else on the body. By the time the match had finished, it was everywhere and a great visual. Number 9, Ruby Riot and NXT Live. Speaking of wrestlers being busted open in matches with Asuka, Charlotte Flair wasn't the only exception to this, as in 2017, Ruby Riot was busted open by Asuka in a match at an NXT Live event. Now, though the cameras weren't rolling, fans in attendance managed to pick up what happened to be Riot suffering a nasty gash on her head in the match, which in turn created a crimson mask on her face. NXT officials would stop the match immediately so Riot could be safely treated. Number 8, Dana Brooke, WWE Main Event 2019.
Dana Brooke would go face first in the LED post. The match had to be stopped abruptly.
Now, the next incident of a female superstar being busted open is often forgot about by most fans, mainly because it occurred on an episode of Main Event rather than an episode of Raw, SmackDown, or even a pay-per-view. The incident took place in a match between Dana Brooke and Sarah Logan in 2019, and during the match, Brooke's head managed to bounce off the ring post.
Oh my gosh!
This caused a very serious injury, so much so that the match had to be officially stopped so Brooke could be treated by the WWE medical team. Number 7, Sasha Banks, Roadblock 2016.
Last night, I literally gave my blood, sweat, and tears.
The main event of Roadblock 2016 featured Sasha Banks defending the Raw Women's title against Charlotte Flair in an Iron Man match. Towards the end of the match, fans noted that Sasha had quite a substantial amount of blood coming out of her mouth. It appeared as if she had been accidentally kicked in the mouth in the closing moments, and although the cut looked bad, it added to the story. Number 6, Chaparita Assari, Raw in 1995.
Welcome to the Manatee Civic Center, and welcome to Monday Night Raw!
During this episode of Raw in 1995, in a match between Chaparita Assari and Aja Kong, Kong managed to leave Assari in a bloody mess, which left Raw announcer Vince McMahon unable to explain to the audience why one of the women in the match was covered in blood. Now, this is the new generation era, where hardly anybody was busted open. The incident seemed to occur from a back fist from Kong towards Assari, and this led to Assari's nose exploding and her being busted open. Assari would have a broken nose following the match, and it appeared as if the WWE audience and Vince himself weren't ready for this type of women's wrestling to be introduced into a WWE product. Number 5, Shayna Baszler, NXT Live 2018. During this NXT Live event, which featured Shayna Baszler competing in a 6-women tag match, the match had to be stopped for a brief period after she suffered a cut on the head. Thanks to a fan in attendance who shared the incident on social media, the cut she suffered was rather severe and her face was virtually covered. Shayna, however, appeared quite proud of the incident, and she took to Instagram to share an image of her with the crimson mask with the caption, "Warrior Queen." Number 4, Beth Phoenix, Royal Rumble 2020.
Right into Scott, even better, King! Beth Phoenix! The Hall of Famer! The Glamazon!
Beth Phoenix's injury at the 2020 Rumble was one of the most brutal injuries that had ever taken place in the match itself. For some context, Beth was the MVP of the Women's Rumble that year. She spent almost 30 minutes in the match and seemed to be putting in a fantastic performance. However, during the match, Beth would knock her head against the ring post, which resulted in her having a cut and her blonde hair would be stained red. Fans and fellow wrestlers praised Beth's toughness, including Hall of Famer and husband Edge, as he would comment on the injury following the match via social media and simply tweet out, "My wife's a badass." Number 3, Ronda Rousey, Survivor Series 2018. Ronda Rousey took an awful lot of punishment in her match against Charlotte Flair at 2018 Survivor Series pay-per-view. After Charlotte was DQ'd for hitting Ronda with a kendo stick, Charlotte continued the assault and would even use a chair to crush the throat of Rowdy Ronda. Ronda was badly cut in her mouth during the match, and by the time the match had finished, it was everywhere. And her main event showdown against Becky Lynch and Charlotte at WrestleMania 35.
For pound with Rousey.
Oh, Rousey just takes out Becky.
Number 2, Lita, Survivor Series 2000. Lita's efforts and toughness at the 2000 Survivor Series solidified her as a fan favorite and one of the most legendary women wrestlers of all time. In a women's title match with Ivory, Ivory's heel managed to connect with Lita's face, which sliced it open. The match wouldn't be stopped and Lita would continue wrestling despite being covered. 5 minutes later and the match would be over and Lita was able to get the medical treatment she needed. The fans in attendance appreciated the efforts of Lita continuing the match as she received a standing ovation from them, as well as receiving praise from Jerry Lawler and Jim Ross on commentary. And number 1, Becky Lynch, Raw in 2018.
And I get a punch in the face from Nia Jax that changed my career forever.
And Nia Jax has unfortunately attained a reputation for being unsafe and a reckless worker in the women's division. The segment took place towards the build towards Survivor Series 2018 when the SmackDown roster invaded Raw and the two women's rosters brawled. During that brawl, Nia proceeded to legitimately punch Becky right in the face, where she suffered a broken nose.
As soon as the cameras go off, the place goes dark, I walk out and I have no idea where I am.
Due to the injury, Becky would miss the Survivor Series pay-per-view, a pay-per-view where she was initially booked to wrestle Ronda Rousey. However, although the broken nose was indeed serious, it did take Becky's popularity to the next level, and the image of Becky standing amongst the crowd with blood on her face became somewhat of an iconic image that solidified her success and notoriety. But there you have it folks, 10 female wrestlers who were accidentally busted open. Be sure to leave your comments down below, subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you next time with some more wrestling content.